All right. Good evening, everyone. At least someone. So good evening, everyone. Much better. Thank you. So I hope, we hope you had a great first day. It's been quite exhausting. And I hope that you've been inspired to maybe not today go home, but at the end of the week go home and build some cool stuff. Now, when I was here last year, and actually every year I've been to DevOps, I've been massively invigorated and inspired, and I'm full of energy to build something cool. And a few years ago, that was a Spring Boot starter. So you probably know the Spring Boot starter web and such. I wanted to build my own. And it wasn't enough that I built my own, I also wanted to share it with the world. And what better way to ship it than to the clouds? In the clouds, there's actually a lot of code already. You have Maven Central, where you can find a ton of different dependencies that you could download. But there's also package tools like SDKman, JBang, Chocolatey. So putting your code out there is such an invigorating thing because it's not just yours anymore, you're sharing it with the rest of the world. But getting your code out there, it's actually quite tricky. And when you start looking at some of the code examples, it's all a lot of small building blocks. And I found a lot of different scripts to do all these things. And in the end, my build pipeline looked something like this. I mean, it's an elegant little spaceship. It's small, and it exists of all little kind of scripts that I gobbled together. So this is not going to get us into space, but it's something that we could use. So maybe a raise of hands. Who has like a jumbled mess of a scripting pipeline? You?
Yeah, guilty.
Yeah, we all kind of gobble it together at some point. So I thought at some point, there has to be a better way to do these things, to release my code to Maven Central, to put things in Chocolatey. And then I was quite surprised when at some point in time, I spotted this tweet. It's from a library, a tool called JReleaser. And it said, JReleaser spotted in the wild by Maarten Mulders. And I was like, I know that guy. It's this guy. Maarten is a colleague of mine, so I immediately was like, Maarten, I've been struggling with these scripts. Like, is this really all it is? And he was so excited. Are you still excited about all this stuff?
I still am, definitely. I still am, definitely. So, yeah, we had a few conversations on that. And I basically told Tom, look, this little spaceship of yours, it's cute. It might get us to the cloud, but let's be honest, it will not. However, other people have built real spaceships, like these. And these definitely will get us to the cloud one day. Unlike the space agencies in this world, these people have been kind enough to share what they've done with the rest of the world so that we could actually use it and benefit from it. And that is what JReleaser is. So we discussed what it could do and how it could help, and how JReleaser is actually that rocket ship that brings you into space. So today we're here for two main reasons. It's basically two guys being enthusiastic about JReleaser, and we want to tell you why we're enthusiastic about it, what it can do, so that you have yet another tool that you can put in your toolbox and that you can get out of it when it comes in handy. Being independent of a software selling company, we can just talk about other work by other people as well, even if we didn't create it ourselves. The mastermind behind JReleaser, Andres, is currently in the Americas, so he couldn't make it here. So that's why we are here, to share what he did and to tell you about it and hopefully make you as enthusiastic as we are. So in the remaining 26 minutes, what will we cover? We will start with discussing JReleaser itself, what it is, how it works. We will show a few of our usages of JReleaser in action, because it is tools in action, right? And then, if time permits, we have a few recipes with ideas and possibilities how you can make JReleaser work for yourself. With that out of the way, let's get started, and let's briefly discuss what JReleaser is. In one sentence, it's a release automation tool. So it helps you automate your software releases, and it markets itself as the quick and effortless way to release your Java project. Well, that's exactly what both of us were looking for, quick and effortless. Don't make me think I'm lazy, I just want it to work. Well, the risk, of course, is that it's basically a set of the same scripts that Tom already discussed.
But then written by someone else.
But then written by somebody else. So it would be good to see if anybody else is using it beside Andres and the two of us. And we found quite a few projects out in the wild that use JReleaser. I'm sure some of you may have heard of Quarkus or JBang or JFR Unit or SDKman. Should be familiar names somewhere to you. So at least we're not the only ones using it, and more people are in fact using JReleaser. Now that's great. Let's quickly recap. What are we going to put in the cloud? What are we going to share with the world? Tom?
For me, it was my Spring Boot starter application that I will show in a bit. And I basically wanted to push it to Maven Central because that's, I guess, where most of us get our dependencies when they do something public.
Is there any alternatives to that? Okay, never mind. Well, and my pet project is a command line tool that I use to search Maven Central. I hate it to do Alt-Tab or Command-Tab to go to the web browser, search mavencentral.org, copy-paste the results. So I have a command line tool that does just that, which is in fact also born out of inspiration, not from a conference, but from a paper magazine that once had an article on building your own CLI applications. But I want it to be available in SDKman, Homebrew, Chocolatey, and whatnot. In fact, all those package managers should have my tool, and that was the use case I had. But being a native executable, I have versions for Windows, for Linux, for Mac OS on the old Intel chipset, but also on the new Apple Silicon. I want, of course, not to distribute the Silicon binary to the Intel chipset, for instance, because that's not going to work, or the Windows binary to the Linux platform. So, yeah, I have to assemble all these files in the correct format. Also, not all package managers like all formats. Chocolatey wants a zip file, and other SDKman wants a tar.gz. So, yeah, you have to work around all that. And before you know it, again, you have the same rubbish of
that's
scripts.
A lot of different distributions
Yes.
that you actually need to create. So for each platform you want to deploy to, well, release to, so people can download it, you need to build something different. Luckily, mine is just a jar file, being a Spring Boot starter, and Java is write once, run anywhere. So all I wanted to do as a measly developer without CLI apps is to just push it to Maven Central. And there's a few tricks a few things you need to keep in mind when you want to push it to Maven Central, and I'll dig into that later. Now, luckily, maybe some people are freaking out like JReleaser. Is that like something new that I need to use besides Maven or Gradle? Actually, no, not at all. It uses basically your same automation tools in your build pipelines that you already have, but it can extend it, expand it, and make it a bit better. So this JReleaser tool can run as a CLI tool. It can run as a Maven plugin where everything gets configured. So it is enhancing what you already have. It is not a, oh, please go rewrite everything in GitHub action files or whatever. So one important note, we're talking about distributions. Distributions is a thing that gets shipped to different package managers. And the distributions actually contain artifacts. And there's a small technical difference between artifacts in JReleaser and artifacts in Maven, which may be a bit confusing, but artifacts in JReleaser are just any kind of file that you want to put inside a distribution.
So, great.
Then we have one.
Yeah, we have a distribution. We're good to go.
We just use our existing tools to build a distribution.
Yeah.
So that's a jar file, or use the existing tools that already exist to build the CLI tool. But that's not enough, Maarten.
No, because if I have this new version of my tool, or you have your new version of your Spring Boot starter, then the very least you want to do is publish information about it, right? Describe what is new, the bugs that got fixed, maintenance tasks that you did. And I quite don't feel like writing these by hand. Going through my Git commit history and check, yeah, that was kind of a bug fix, I guess, or maybe a new feature. That's too much manual labor. And as I said, I'm a bit of a lazy developer, so I want all of that to be automated. And writing release notes by hand and copy-pasting them into GitHub is definitely not what I would like to do. Luckily, JReleaser can assist you in that, and I happen to use conventional commits, which is like a template for your commit messages. And if you follow that, JReleaser will just generate a nice changelog for you. It will even group your changes. It will say like, oh, these are the real bug fixes, these are some maintenance tasks, and hey, look at that. All those release archives are just there, and each of them contains the right binary, which is great, and I can just click on that zip file and download it and install it to my computer. Well, I'm already pretty happy with this. Would that work for you?
You say you're lazy. I'm a millennial. I can be lazier. So, deploying to GitHub is all nice and well, but the files are there. It's like going to a store and checking, are the chips in? No, the chips are in.
Well, there are plenty.
Yeah, on this screen,
I
but
like.
maybe they're out. I don't know. I have to go to the store to see if they're there. It's the same with your GitHub stuff. So instead of doing that, it's crisp.
Never mind.
So instead of going to a store and manually, going to GitHub in this case and having to manually check is there a new thing and then downloading it, we like to use like package managers and bring it to my spot. Don't make me go somewhere and download everything. This is just so much better. So instead of going to your GitHub page that I don't really care about, I just want the end software, I would really like if it could just come from Brew, Chocolatey, or whatever tool we have.
Yeah. Oh, I can relate to that, to be honest. And the good thing is JReleaser actually can make that work for you. This is like we're preparing this presentation and just making an inventory of all the package managers that JReleaser supports. And even when we were writing it, I found out like, hey, there's a new one there, Scoop. I didn't even know it exists. Can anybody tell me for which platform is it? Windows, all right, excellent. It's on my to-do list to add that as well, because then you can also install my tool. Thank you. But just to point out, there's a plethora of package managers. Some of them are really specific to a platform, Scoop, Chocolatey, if you're on Windows. Some are cross-platform, like Homebrew, works on Linux and on Windows. SDKman, same story. SnapStore only works on Linux. So the only thing I need to make sure is to upload the right release to the right package manager and announce it over there, which already saves me quite some trouble, plus makes it easier to get those snacks into Tom's hands, which is also a great benefit. So that's a big improvement already. And then if it's there, what are you going to do, Tom?
What do you mean, what am I going to do?
You're supposed to run SDK update, right?
Yeah. Why are you forcing me to run SDK update? I'm lazy. I told you. I don't want to have to run it every day.
You're saying I should go to you and say, hey, yeah. Tom, why don't you run? Yeah, well, honestly.
It's your software. Put some effort into it.
Yeah, all right. Okay, you got me there. Well, the thing is, that's what I do right now. So when I have a new release of MCS, I just tweet about it. I blue sky about it. I Mastodon about it. These aren't verbs, are they? Never mind. I just try to spread out the word, which works, but still is a lot of manual work. And in fact, it would be even better if I could even automate that and just make sure that whenever I have a new release, it just gets out in the world and everybody can know about it.
And of course, we wouldn't be mentioning this if JReleaser supports such a thing. So within your build, you can build everything and also announce it on all the different platforms. Fun fact, is anyone of you using Buffer to post to many different social media platforms at the same time? Some people. So JReleaser supports more platforms than any of those social media specific tools. So there's really a lot of places that you can inform people to. So that's even Slack and Teams for the people that are working on internal software, but you want to announce it on Teams or Slack internally and not publicly, it's also supported here. And even if the tool isn't supported, there's also webhooks available to announce so that you can make it work. We're developers here, right? So as soon as you have a webhook within the release, it's go time. So to summarize a little bit, on the left, you have build tools. It can be anything. It can be command line, can even be Rust or NPM. From that comes different files, different distributions, and JReleaser can do in large, in some way, 3 different things. It can release to GitHub, and release is a bit of a difficult term in these presentations because release can mean different things, but release here means push to GitHub or GitLab with the change notes and all the files. Then you also can package to a bunch of different packagers, so that's SDKman, Brew, so on. And it can also announce to the Bluebird thing that we don't speak about anymore. I actually didn't update that one. That's okay.
It's fine.
It's fine.
It's just called Twitter.
Yeah, it's still called Twitter.
Yeah.
We're going to die on this hill, right? Okay.
Sure we are.
So SDKman, Mastodon, Blue Sky, whatever. So all of those are available. But Maarten, I have to say, we promised a Tools in Action talk, and this is a full stalking talk. So I suggest
at
we
least
stop.
I hope we are doing a great job on that.
I suggest we stop fooling around and just show them your stuff.
Yeah,
show them your tool you're so proud of.
You're definitely right, Tom. Enough full stalking tools. So I already told you about the first example project, which is a command line tool to search Maven Central. And I'm going to show you a few steps here. And the first step is that I need to build the actual executable that would run on your machine. And I'm doing that with Maven and a tool called GraalVM. Not sure if everybody knows about it, but at least in the troll row there's somebody who knows about it. Second, what I'm going to show you is how that gets packaged into a distribution. Again, Maven has got a big role here, combined with JReleaser. Thirdly, I'm going to ship the distribution. That's solely the task of JReleaser. And finally, the whole thing is tied together and orchestrated basically by GitHub Actions. Right, let's see. So my GitHub page for my project, how's the font size? Is it readable even for the people in the back? A bit bigger. Tom, AZERTY keyboard, I don't know what a plus sign is. Oh, wow.
You can pinch.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome, I didn't know that. So assembling building the binaries, actually, wow, I really lost my words here, is done all in the back. As I said, it's Maven together with GraalVM. And let's see, here we see it. There's a native profile which says invoke the GraalVM native image, native Maven plugin, producing an executable. Depending on the platform, you might need to add .exe because Windows otherwise doesn't recognize your executable as being executable. So far, so good. And then it all gets assembled together using the Maven assembler plugin, which uses an assembly description, which basically says I have 3 archive formats, tar.gz, zip, and plain directories. Include the license file, include the executable, again, optionally suffixed with .exe, into a bin folder and give the archive a nice name. Also make sure that the executable has the right permissions so that it's executable on all platforms but Windows. And once we have that, we can go to a GitHub workflow, and there's the release job, which basically asks for a version number, that's this part, and then invokes the build job to produce that executable for each platform. It uses a build matrix, so I can build executables for each platform, combining it all together. And you know what? I feel adventurous today. Let's see if it actually works. There's my release pipeline.
So you're just going to make a release now, huh?
Say what?
You're just going to make a release now?
Yeah, if you don't mind me doing that.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, check. If you don't feel okay, then sure. Yeah, that might help. Okay, I'm oh wait. Yeah, again, AZERTY keyboard. I'm sorry for that. But it also has a number.
That's commas.
Wow.
How many Dutch people does it take to type on a Belgian AZERTY keyboards?
One too many. Okay, this takes longer than I expected. And also probably than you all expected. One.
So professional, Maarten.
Oh, thanks. coming from your side.
Go on. Yeah.
Snapshot. All right, let's give it a go. And once we wait for that to happen, what I can tell you in the meantime is that once that release gets going, eventually it triggers a commit, for instance, in this GitHub repository, which is the bridge to the Ubuntu Snap Store. The Ubuntu Snap Store is connected to this repo, and each new commit triggers a build there. It also commits a file here in my Chocolatey bucket, which then triggers a GitHub action that announces the new version to the Chocolatey store, which will then run a few automated tests like virus scans and then that kind of stuff in order to publish the new release. But I suggest we are not going to wait for that. Maybe you can show a bit about your project.
Yeah, of course. So all this native compiling does take a while, even though it's awesome. Oh my God. I'm sorry, Alina from the Graal team is here, so I might have offended her. So all nice and well, but I wanted to show you my Spring Boot starter, which of course is the Rickroll Security Spring Boot starter. All it does is it adds a filter that instead of giving a 404 or an unauthorized, it redirects the browser to Rickroll. Because if you have people that try to, in the URL say .php, but you're clearly not running a PHP app, you want to redirect them to something that will deter them from trying it again. So
This doesn't?
yeah. It's funny. It started as a joke and it escalated a bit with people from the Spring team actually committing on it. So, but I wanted to push it to Maven Central, so I quickly wanted to guide you through what it kind of needs. Well, first there's a manual step, because you can't just push to Maven Central. This is not an NPM repository. You actually need to ask with a Jira ticket to say, please make me the repository, and then they will check a couple of things, because you need to follow a few of the requirements. Now, requirements is vague, so I have a second slide for that, of course. What are some of the requirements? Well, you need to use the correct coordinates. For example, I am the owner of the domain name tomcools.be, so I'm allowed to use the group ID, the reverse DNS, be.tomcools. So this is an example, not for you, but more like this is what it would be like. So you can't use this as a group name. What else needs to be provided? Well, you need to provide the Java doc and the sources, so that if people use it in IntelliJ, for example, and you click download sources, that the sources are actually there. The jar files that you want to upload actually need a checksum to make sure that whatever you upload is actually the thing that arrives in Maven Central as well. So they check the checksum and make sure that what you uploaded complies with that. And you also need to sign your files to make sure that the files that you send were actually sent by you. So I'm going to give a quick show of what that looks like. So first I'm going to kick off. So there's two steps you need to do. First, it's a bit smaller, right? There we go. So first, this is going to build my projects and run my tests, which shouldn't take too long. There we go. And then finally, I'm going to also run a full release, and I'm going to remove the dry run for this time. And this is going to do a couple of things. It is going to create a nice changelog. And in my configuration here, I've specified, hey, I'm using conventional commit, so that's the thing that Maarten already mentioned. It will create a nice changelog based on my Git. So this says build, docs. So if I then go to the changelog that gets generated right here, should have been generated right here. Am I a bit too early? Is it still going? Huh? JReleaser, release, changelog. Aha, loading. So you can see it grouped my commits nicely together, built documentation, and of course I congratulate myself for contributing to my repository by default.
You can actually filter your own commits out.
Yeah, I can filter my own commits, but pat yourself on the back once in a while. And this will actually push everything to Nexus, so it's taking a bit longer than expected. And it will push my go post something on Blue Sky and Mastodon. So this is Unfortunately, on a conference Wi-Fi, it's a bit slower than expected. But this is basically all you need to configure JReleaser. It's just pretty simple. It signs the apps that you created. It actually creates everything here. So it creates more than just one jar file. It creates the docs, the documentation, the sources, the Java doc, the checksums, and so on. So if we wait a little bit, it would gone live, but I think we should continue from here. So that's basically it. Very few configuration for actually a big result. Now, if you think, yeah, Tom, but I'm not doing anything publicly, there's a few recipes that I wanted to share with you that you could do with JReleaser, just to show you what's really inside the box. So the first thing, I kind of mentioned it, it's announcing. Just announce what you built. You can use it internally to announce to a Slack channel saying, hey, we have a new version of this shared library that we use within the company. Or yeah, if you want to share something publicly, then you can do that as well. It's really simple. You have a lot of different things that you can push to. Now, sometimes there's files that are common across a lot of applications, and we are copying those files to the repository each time and keeping them in sync. So JReleaser also has this thing called just the download functionality, where you can download certain files just from an HTTP or FTP source and include them in your build. So where might this be useful? If you have a license, software license that's written by your legal department and dumped somewhere, it can download it. If you have a logo that you want to use in all your apps, you can download it as well, and then it will be included in your build. So this is just simple configuration. Last thing you can do is, since we are all into, or we should all be into supply chain security, you could let JReleaser create an attestation file. And the file will basically contain all your dependencies and the checksum. And that could be also uploaded somewhere so your legal department can check it, or if you have some custom tool that checks what are the different impacted software modules in case you have something, in case you have a big issue. So we have 3 more minutes, Maarten. So just close down and then see what's finished.
Let's do that. And maybe we have time for a question in between.
Yeah, because what we've done is still, well, I began with these scripts in the beginning. Like I was gobbling everything together, and sometimes it doesn't fit. Well, sometimes JReleaser doesn't have an answer for it yet. So then it needs to fit into JReleaser. So how might that? Yeah.
Well, you basically have 2 options in that case. Let's run through them real quickly. JReleaser lets you customize the whole thing, either using hooks, which are hooking into predefined moments of the whole workflow. Before and after each step, it gives you the chance to run a command or a script that you can inline in your configuration. And, well, being able to do that, you can already customize quite a lot of things. But if that's not enough for you, the JReleaser API also offers you extension points that can, well, you can basically go down the rabbit hole and do whatever you feel like. They're written in Java, so whatever your imagination can think of, you can probably build, as long as you're proficient in Java, of course. But I assume you all are, because you're here, right? I believe it's slowly time to wrap up. As for performance of GraalVM, no, it's nothing about GraalVM. The Windows runners on GitHub are a bit slow, so I'm still waiting on those to finish the release. But in the meantime, we can already summarize what we've discussed. We've discussed JReleaser. We've shown you how you can set up a project and how you can actually initiate a release. And we gave you some ideas of what other things you can do with JReleaser. So before we release you back into the Antwerp evening, please take these with you. You don't need to get started with JReleaser and apply all of it in one moment. You can just pick whatever you need. It really pays off to look at existing projects and see how they solved a particular problem, leverage from that, benefit from that. And finally, there's this old rule that says if it hurts, do it more often. This also applies here. If doing a release hurts for you, do it more often. Automate the heck out of it, and hopefully make it a lot easier by then. I see by now the Windows executables are almost done, so that is outside our time frame, be sure to check out the new releases of Tom's Rick-rolling security starter. We'll share the links soon on all the social media, or to check out Maven Central Search. And as a final question to you, please leave your feedback in the Devox app. You know how it rolls. How likely are you to recommend these talks to your friend and your family? Well, we've all seen these before. Highly appreciate it, and hope to see you around in the coming days. Thanks.